Afternoon to all the viewers who are viewing this webinar, and this is one of the important webinar, and the topic of this webinar is also very important one. That is the webinar on the directive principle of the state policy in part 4 of the Indian Constitution. And our eminent guest is Mr. S.D. Sanjay sir, who is the former Additional Solicitor General of India and is a senior advocate at the Patna High Court. Let me give the description of Sanjay sir, who is a senior advocate and former Additional Solicitor General of India, Patna High Court. See, S.D. Sanjay sir was born in the modest family as a teacher, and he did his schooling and graduation in the commerce stream with honors from Patna University in 1978 and 80 batch, securing the first class with distinction in the accounts. Thereafter, he went to Delhi and did his LLB from the University of Delhi in the year 1984 and got himself enrolled in the Bar Council of Delhi and started practice there. However, after a few years, he came to Patna to join his parents and started practice in Patna High Court. And within 3 to 4 years, he picked up his laboratory practice in the commercial laws as well as in the different taxation law and was engaged by the large number of the corporate houses to conduct their cases in Patna High Court, Jharkhand High Court, Calcutta High Court and Delhi High Court, as well as the Honorable Supreme Court. In the year 2010, he was appointed as Additional Advocate General by the government of Bihar, and in the year 2013, he was designated as a senior advocate for his best performance by the full bench of the Patna High Court. He worked as an Additional Advocate General till he resigned from the post on 2nd January 2014. Thereafter, he continued with the private practice, and on 8th April 2015, the Appointment Committee of the Cabinet headed by the Honorable Prime Minister of India cleared his appointment as an Additional Solicitor General of India, and he has been deputed in Patna to become in charge of the entire union litigation in the Patna High Court. The post of Additional Solicitor General of India in Patna High Court was created by the present government in December 2014. So on this platform, sir, I warm welcome you once again, sir. Always your services we are taking from you, sir. Just a minute. So now I will just tell our Director and Dean, Dr. Akhil Syed, sir, to warm welcome our eminent speaker, Mr. S.D. Sanjay, sir. Akhil, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Rajesh. Thank you very much. And again, lots of thanks before I welcome him to our esteemed guest for today's webinar, Shri Sanjay Saab. Sadar Pranam, Sarji. It is a great pleasure that you are again at the Parul Institute of Law, Parul University. Sir, we are very much delighted with your kindness and the feedback which we have received from your earlier webinar. And I'm sure today the viewers of the webinar are very in a large number. Sir, the way you have taught in earlier seminar also, it is really wonderful. We feel that if we would have been studied under your lecturership, we would have been little different law teacher or different lawyer. And today the topic which you have taken, that is really very important. The directive policies, and unfortunately in many of the constitution of the various countries, such provisions are not there. And ours is a country that is the foresightness of the drafter of our constitution who have drafted to guide the state in their business and their functions. This is a special provision about directive principles, and this has been always very important topic. And also nowadays people have lots of agitations against the state policies. Then it is a very important time to review what are the constitutional provision about the directive principles. So I am very much thankful for Honorable Sanjay Saab for sparing his valuable time and to facilitate all of us, including my students, my PhD scholars and faculty members, to enlighten on this particular topic. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Welcome.
So now I have Dr. Rajesh Singh handing this session on this very important topic on this webinar on the directive principle of the state policy. Now, sir, with a very respectful aspect, sir, I am handing this session to you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving this valuable time to us, sir. Sir, your voice is not coming, sir.
Sir, you are muted. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you, friends. Very warm good morning, rather good afternoon to you all. I feel privileged when I join my student friends and teachers for such sessions. And I feel that every session one learns something new. And therefore, on the last occasion when I had spoken on art of cross-examination, then it is not only that I had made some speech, but for that I also read and recollected all those which otherwise I could have forgotten, because nowadays I am not going to district court for cross-examination. So that was a topic which I was doing earlier, but then it still has the relevance. And every practicing lawyer has got great relevance of cross-examination. And the today's topic is another most important topic. Of course, this is a subjective topic with regard to directive principles of state policy, which is in part 4 of the Indian Constitution. Friends, directive principles are certain ideals, particularly aiming at socio-economic justice, which according to the framers of the Constitution, Indian state should strive for. Directive principles in the Indian Constitution are taken from the Constitution of Ireland. And in fact, in Ireland also, it was not the original thinking, it was imported from Spain. But the idea and philosophy of these principles can be traced back to French Declaration of Human Rights, American Declaration of Independence, liberal as well as socialist philosophy of 19th century, and our own Gandhian concept of Sarvodaya. In fact, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, while sitting in Constituent Assembly debates, had described directive principles as novel feature of our Constitution. Ivor Jennings has observed that philosophy underlying most of the directive principles in Fabian socialism. Many of our constitution makers were under great influence of socialism and Gandhism and Gandhian thoughts. So, though these provisions and principles lay down the socialistic pattern of society and Gandhian ideal state as objectives, which the Indian states should strive to achieve for fulfilling the aim and aspirations of the people of India. However, when the Constitution was being framed, on the one hand, importance of individual rights were discussed, and it was said to be Magna Carta of our Constitution. But on the other hand, the rights of the society as a whole, keeping in mind the welfare of people of our country, was also discussed. And it was decided to place as the next chapter after the individual rights known as the fundamental rights, which was placed in chapter 3. After the framers of Constitution named it to be the directive principles of state policy and placed in chapter 4 of our Constitution. Friends, the directive principles of state policy are enshrined in Article 36 to 51 of our Constitution. They prescribe the principles that should be followed by the government of both center and states while enacting new laws or policies. They bestow a positive obligation on the government. The DPSPs are distinct from fundamental rights, as while fundamental rights are justiciable, They can be enforced in the court of law if they are violated. There is a right to seek suitable remedy from the court under Article 32 before the Honorable Supreme Court and under Article 226 before the respective high courts. But directive principles of state policies are not enforceable by the courts if they are violated, meaning thereby they are not justiciable as stated in Article 37. Now, Article 37 reads, the provisions contained in this part shall not be enforceable by any court, but the principle therein laid down are the nevertheless fundamental in governance of the country, and it shall be the duty of the state to apply these principles in making laws. Friends, the principles prescribed by the directive principles of state policy are the backbone of governance in India, as we are not only a democratic country, but also a welfare state. Therefore, the state has to secure a social order for the promotion of welfare of people. The directive principles strive to establish a welfare state and to uphold the objectives and ideas embedded in the preamble as held by the apex court in Paschim Banga Khet Mazdoor Samiti versus State of West Bengal. That judgment was reported in 1996, Volume 4, Supreme Court Cases, page 37. Thus, even if the directive principles of state policy are not enforceable by the courts, in case of violation, they act as guideline for the lawmaking body. Whenever the laws are made, the state, either the central or the state, has to keep in mind that it is in consonance with the state policy for the welfare of the people. They can also act as yardstick through which the citizen can determine the effectiveness and drawbacks of government's law and policies, so that while choosing their representative in the parliament and state legislature at the time of election, the electors are in position to consider that the government to what extent has been able to fulfill the aspirations of the people. Directive principles inculcate into itself the idea of socialist, liberal, Gandhian and international principles. Friends, Article 38 to 43 of the Constitution lays down the guidelines for the government when making laws or policies relating to social, economic and political spheres of life. It is in these provisions that the Constitution lay down the ideas and principles of socialism. And you all know that we adopted a mid path, not a stricter socialism or stricter capitalism, so we are called a mixed economy. Similarly, Article 44 to Article 50 of the Constitution incorporates the liberal principles. The Gandhian principles can be reflected in Article 43, Article 47 and 48. For instance, Article 43b states that the state shall strive to develop the cottage industry in rural areas, both on individual and cooperative basis. In accordance with Gandhian ideals of village Swaraj and Swadeshi movement that advocated for development of rural areas, because you all know that most of the population of India are situated in rural areas. Now, while Article 43 and 48 states that the government shall strive to ban intoxicating substances and ban the slaughter of milk cattle, the implementation of these two principles is not uniform throughout India, as the law and policies differ in every state. Then the international principles have been incorporated through Article 51, according to which the government shall strive to promote international peace, security, treaty, agreements, laws, and maintain diplomatic relations with foreign nations. Friends, we know that right from our independence, we believe in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that we believe that the entire world should be very friendly, there should be harmony and peace. And that is what has been incorporated in our directive principles as well in terms of Article 51. Now, the directive principles are not just restricted to Part 4 of the Constitution. Even that spirit is there in Article 335, 350A, 350 capital A, and 351 resembles with the directive principles of state policy. By reading these articles together with Part 4, the Supreme Court has given the same importance to them as directive principles. There has been long debate on whether it is now it is between directive principles and fundamental rights. There has been long debate whether directive principles or the fundamental rights that take precedence over the other when one of them is being violated. Earlier view of the Supreme Court, which reflected through several judgments, was that fundamental right holds the key and it is more important than the directive principles. For instance, in the state of Madras versus Champakam Devarajan, that is reported in AIR 51 Supreme Court 226, the Supreme Court held that if a law is violated relating to fundamental rights, the law would be void. But if the law violates directive principles, it cannot be held void only on that ground. Then came Golaknath versus State of Punjab. You all must have read or must be reading famous judgment of Golaknath versus State of Punjab, which is reported in AIR 1967 Supreme Court 1643. Now the Honorable Supreme Court held that reforms of implementing the directive principles of Part 4 are liable to be struck down as they infringe the provisions in Part 3 of the Constitution. Now, in response to this judgment, the Parliament inserted Article 31C, which stated that if a law is made in furtherance of directive principles, then it can held to be void on the ground that it is inconsistent with the right under Article 14 and 19. Now, I would like to read Section 31C, Article 31C. Now, this is very important. Now, it said that saving of law giving effect to certain directive principles. Now, it says, notwithstanding anything contained in Article 13, no law giving effect to the policy of the state securing all or any of the principles laid down in Part 4 shall be deemed to be void on the ground that it is inconsistent with Part 4. It is inconsistent or take away or abridges any of the right conferred by Article 14 or Article 19. And no law containing a declaration that it is for the giving effect to such policy shall be called in question in any court on the ground that it does not give effect to such policy, provided that where such law is made by the legislature of a state, the provisions of this article shall not apply thereto unless such law having been reserved for the consideration of the President has received his assent. So you can understand the importance of this insertion of this article and the mindset of the legislature, of the government. Now, thereafter came the famous judgment of Keshavanand Bharati versus State of Kerala, reported in AIR 1973 Supreme Court 1461. The Honorable Supreme Court held to the effect that Parliament can amend any part of the Constitution, which includes Part 3, but it cannot affect or destroy the basic structure of the Constitution. And the concept of basic structure, that basic structure is the democratic setup of the government and welfare state that must not be disturbed. The second clause of Article 31C was declared as unconstitutional and void as it was against the basic structure of Constitution propounded in this case itself, by which it was provided to take away the right of the court. Now, no law can be framed which affects the right of the court or which takes away the authority of the court to make a judicial review of any provision. Now, you must have heard about the recent judgment by 9 judges in the case of appointment of judges, that is the collegium case, wherein the Supreme Court again reiterated the basic structure theory that no law can be framed even by the Union Parliament which affect the independence of judiciary, and independence of judiciary has been held to be one of the basic structure of the Constitution. Now, the Supreme Court upheld the first provision of Article 31C, that law can be made for giving effect to certain directive principles. So the importance of directive principles now cannot be undermined. The court also held that the power of judicial review cannot be taken out by the Parliament. Now, the issue of 31C was again addressed in the case of Minerva Mills Limited versus Union of India, reported in AIR 1980, Supreme Court 1789, wherein it was held that law can only be protected under Article 31C if it is made to implement the directive principles in Articles 39B and C only. It does not extend to all the directive principles. Later, in Ashok Kumar Thakur versus Union of India, reported in 2008, 6 SCC, page 1, the Supreme Court held that only because directive principles are not justiciable does not mean that they are inferior in significance to the fundamental rights. Even earlier, in IR Kolho versus State of Tamil Nadu, reported in 2007, 2 SCC, page 1, the Supreme Court stated that directive principles of state policy and fundamental rights have to be balanced. And this balance can be tilted in favor of directive principles in favor of for public good, but it cannot be such that it effectively overturns the fundamental rights or the individual liberty. Now, the relationship between directive principles and state policy has been held to be supplementary and complementary to each other, that calls for harmonious construction between the two. Now, this was the conceptual part and the provisions about the directive principles. Now comes the implementation of directive principles of the state policy. Now, directive principles are sometimes criticized for being non-justiciable, vague, and based on moral percepts, whose execution is totally left to the discretion of the government. But for more than 70 years of working of the Constitution shows that successive governments in India have taken various steps to implement the directive principles. The government has made suitable laws and policies to implement Article 45, which states that the state shall endeavor to provide early childhood care and education for all children until they complete the age of 6 years. As is evident from Article 21A and the enactment of Right to Education Act, the implementation of Article 50, which states that the state will try to separate the judiciary from the executive in the case of public service. I have given the example of the collegium case, appointment of judges case. Then the state will try, in case of public service also, there has been sufficiently maintained through independent judicial appointment and constitutional protection to judges from any influence of the executive. Some of the measures, other measures in this effect are, in order to give effect to the directive principles under Article 39, various legislations were enacted by the government with the objective to organize the ownership and control of material resources to serve the common good, and some of these are land reforms, land is most essential material resource in an agrarian country like India. Though land reforms, Jamindari system was abolished, ceiling on land holding imposed, and surplus land distributed among landless laborers. Minimum Wages Act has also come to ensure workers to get wages at least to sustain themselves and are protected from being exploited. Then similarly, income tax laws and other taxation measures wherein it has been provided that to tax at higher rate to higher income group people, meaning thereby lesser tax has to be imposed to the persons earning less. So these all virtually steps have been taken which goes a long way for equity and justice and equality in the society. Now, through 73rd Constitutional Amendment, the government fulfilled constitutional obligations stated in Article 40. Three-tier Panchayat Raj system was introduced at villages, block and district level in almost all parts of the country. Now, to promote cottage industries under Article 43, government has established several boards such as Village Industries Board, All India Handicraft Board, Silk Board, Coir Board, which provide essential help to cottage industries in finance and marketing. Government has implemented provisions related to free and compulsory education under Article 45, introduction of 86th Constitutional Amendment and subsequently passed the Right to Education Act 2009. Elementary education has been accepted as fundamental right of each child between 6 to 14 years. So earlier, which was a directive principles, has now emerged as justiciable right, that is right of free education for the children between 6 to 14 years of age. Now, government has launched various development programs for the welfare measure of the citizens, like Community Development Program 1952, Integrated Rural Development Program IRDP 78-79, and in recent years, Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Guarantee Manrega 2006 to raise standard of living, particularly in rural areas, as stated in Article 47 of the Constitution. The list is long. Government has introduced various programs to provide health and nutritional support to women and children, that is maternity relief, midday meal to school children, Beti Bachao Beti Padhao Yojana, that is Sukanya Samriddhi scheme, then Ujjwala Yojana for household ladies to protect and for their welfare. Then central government sponsored schemes like Pradhan Mantri Gram Swasthya Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Suraksha Bima Yojana, Jan Dhan Yojana, National Rural Health Mission, Make in India, Skill India Mission, Ayushman Bharat, and many other health and welfare related programs are being implemented to fulfill the social sector responsibility of Indian society. Directive principles are no doubt the main guiding force behind all these welfare measures, because we have declared ourselves to be a welfare state. Now, one of the very important judgment, which I can say that the Supreme Court has also worked together with the government to realize the implementation of directive principles. And the primary example of such collaboration is demonstrated in the case of Visakha versus State of Rajasthan that was reported in 1997 6 SC 241. Now, the background of this case is that in 1992, one Bhavari Devi, a social worker in Rajasthan, was gang raped by a number of criminals because she had tried to stop a child marriage. You know, child marriage was very, very frequent in Rajasthan. And Bhavari Devi determined to get justice and lodged a case against the offenders. But the accused were acquitted by the trial court. This appalling injustice, together with fighting spirit of Bhavari Devi, inspired several women groups and NGO to file petition in Supreme Court under the collective platform of Visakha. The Supreme Court prompted the government to take suitable measures to set up guidelines to prevent sexual harassment of women at workplace. Nowadays, a lot of women are going to workplace, so their safety and security was very important for the government. So initially, the Supreme Court laid down detailed guidelines, which was nothing but judges made law. But then, at the same time, it left to the government to take steps and bring a legislation. Now, this was under Article 42. Now, after studying the working of the Constitution and Development Strategy adopted by the Government of India, now, before that, let me tell you that later on, the Government of India framed the law to protect the women at their workplace. Now, that is known as Prevention of Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act. Then, after studying the working of the Constitution and Development Strategy adopted by the Government of India, we can definitely say that directive principles have always been accorded due importance and priority in the legislation and policy making. Some of the directive principles have been implemented in word and spirit, and some others are being deliberated. However, there are still wide gap in the field of health and education in India as compared to developed and so many developing countries. India, as a democratic welfare state, cannot turn blind eye to it. So rapid modernization and expansion of basic health and education demands immediate attention of the government. Constitution also contemplates right to work, right to adequate means of livelihood, and socio-economic justice to all sections of society. Therefore, the government is effectively doing much more in this direction to realize the ideals set by the founding fathers of our Constitution. The government has also introduced several policies and programs to implement directive principles. For instance, it has constituted the Niti Aayog, introduced new labor laws, employment schemes, and banned child labor, established Lok Adalats, and gave reservation to weaker sections. Now it is giving focus on skill development, training programs for youth, for self-employment, and that is nowadays known as Atmanirbhar Bharat, how to make India self-reliant. Now, as discussed, there are several directive principles that have been implemented satisfactorily in India, but the same is not true for majority of these principles. The effort or lack of it from government in its implementation has led many scholars to argue that the implementation of directive principles in India has been not a very successful endeavor despite there being some apparent successes. For instance, the delicate balance between the central-state relations, which has become one of the major obstacles with respect to some states in successful implementation. Example, the dream project of our Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi is Ayushman Bharat under Article 47, which has been effectively formulated and implemented in the entire country except West Bengal for health, in the health sector, for free treatment of all those who are covered by it. But it could not be implemented in West Bengal because of the difference in ideology between the two governments. Further, in India, India has a unique socio-economic conditions owing to its vast and diverse population. That has proved to be one of the major difficulties in implementation of directive principles. These are only some of the problems that hinders the implementation of directive principles. Therefore, there is an imminent need to shed light on these issues and open them to scholarly discussions. Ultimately, we are a welfare state, and therefore, the directive principles have very, very important place in India, in our Indian Constitution, and at times, as against individual right, the directive principles are social rights, which according to me must be given primacy over individual rights. And this is how I end my discussion. I thank you all for providing me this privilege to share my views with you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Firstly, very much elaborated session was with you, sir. You have elaborated the case of, first of all, you have gone through the Golaknath case, and after that, you have also incorporated Kesavananda Bharati case, which is talking about the basic structure of the Indian Constitution, and you have also talked about the Minerva Mill case, and then you have gone through the IR Colo case. Sir, I have one question in IR Colo. Sir, actually, I was in confusion because IR Colo, there is that the judgment of IR Colo specifically states that that judiciary is independent and no one has, and you cannot control the judiciary. Sir, my question is that whether the directive principle will be applicable in this aspect.
You see, my answer is very simple.
Yes, sir.
Now, in our democratic setup, right from the beginning, we have talked of independent judiciary,
Correct, sir.
meaning thereby that there must not be any interference, any outside interference in the working of the judiciary, because it is one of the pillar of democracy. All those who feel that justice has not been done knocks the door of justice. Therefore, it is the delicate balance which has to be made between the directive principles and the individual rights, because fundamental right talks in a negative way that in case of violation of fundamental right, one can knock the door of justice to the courts and judiciary can step in and protect the fundamental right. Now, it is of an individual citizen, but so far as directive principles are concerned, it talks about entire society, state, and our country. So it is collective welfare of which the directive principles talks about. But when there is conflict between the two, even till now, firstly, the effort should be made to harmoniously construe it, make the balance. But if it is not, then again individual right has to be given primacy. Unless and until the individual right is adversely affecting the society. Therefore, there must be a very, very delicate balance between the two.
Okay, sir. Sir, one more question, sir.
Yes.
Sir, if there is a dispute between the fundamental rights and the directive principle, so in various cases, it is that fundamental right will always prevails. Okay. So, sir, my question is that if suppose there is because state are making the state laws and center are also making the central laws, correct? So, sir, in the case of the dispute between the fundamental rights and the directive principle, so, sir, according to you, sir, always who will prevail?
You see, there is a basic and fundamental difference between chapter 3 and chapter 4.
Yes, sir.
Now, fundamental right is basic right of citizen. And some are the not only of citizen, but of person. That is the right of humanity, right of dignity, right to life. Now, these are the fundamental rights, whereas the directive principles are for governance. Now, they say that whenever the state is to make a law, they have to keep in mind the welfare of the people. Therefore, when the state makes a law for welfare of the people, so once the law has been made, then any law is presumed to be valid unless declared to be invalid. So if a law has been made that can be tested, like Article 31C has already taken the view that saving of law giving effect to certain directive principles. So all the directive principle does not have primacy, but there are some which has the primacy over fundamental right as well. When the law is made, and that law will be declared to be valid unless it has adverse effect over individual right, which the court finds that it is directly violating, suppose, somebody's life. Then there the life will have primacy over any law which has been guided by the directive principles. That is my answer.
Sir, it was very fantastic answer by you, sir, and you have elaborated with the various case laws on the aspect of this topic, sir. So we really delighted, and we all student of the Parul University have listened very carefully because this is very important topic, sir. So, sir, from this, I am just tell Akhil sir to Akhil sir, are you there? Hello. So, sir, I think 2 questions were there from the student. So, sir, we will wind up the session. Okay, sir. And this is already live, so the student are able to see on their Facebook also. Akhil, sir, yes.
Yeah, actually, I just received a call, so
Okay.
I had to. Please.
So, sir, the 2 questions was there from the student, and we have completed, sir.
Yeah, I heard that. I was there only.
Yes, sir.
So there is no question. Sanjay sir ki explanation mein to it's really nice. It was very much giving knowledge to me also, worthy for me also, so I can understand the things which I am getting clear at this point of time. If my students are getting clear in their life at this age, they would have more understanding about the subject. Sanjay sir, once again, thank you very much. And जैसी चीजें normal होती है, we request you to visit our university once. सर बड़ी खुशी होगी हमें.
Sure. I will.
And for Patna also, myself and Dr. Rajesh will make a plan to visit your office and state of Bihar, so that we can do something in the state of Bihar also from Parul University.
Sure.
Dr. Rajesh, I just request you to remain in touch with sir.
Yes, sir.
And,
I am always in touch with sir.
Plan our visit in state of Bihar, and
Yes,
let
sir.
us visit
Yes, sir.
education institutes there also.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, and oblige, sir, for your kindness, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And I am also thankful to Brijesh Acharya and Jiten Kubhani, sir, for giving a wonderful life. Thank you, Brijesh, sir, and Jiten Kubhani, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay, sir. We are closing the session.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.